on a Friday. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Today on the show, we hope that all of our systems are up and working. Anthony, is speaking of things working, is the music just really loud and not getting any quieter, or what's... It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. On the show today, we just hope all of our systems are firing on all cylinders because, wow, it was pretty crazy to wake up this morning and to just realize that the whole entire world was experiencing this like wild, wacky, crazy, I don't even know what, like this outage from CrowdStrike, the Microsoft software, and to see how intensely it was affecting literally everything from air travel to sports operations to I think a lot of you know I coach fitness classes. Like the system that we use to check in our clients wasn't working. Like literally anything and everything. And so I definitely did not know how we would, like, not that I knew that we'd have a show today, but actually all of our stations, all of our Odyssey stations nationwide were down at some point, and our amazing team was able to get them back online, and they like prioritized by times. Like it's one of those things where you realize like, wow, there are really smart people out there that fix stuff and make it all work. And I saw one technology expert quoted on Twitter saying that this is basically what they feared happening for Y2K, except for it actually happened. That for all of the fears that when, if most of you listening, I'm assuming, know what Y2K was, but for the younger people that are listening that were not alive or cognizant in the year 2000, basically the fear was we had started to build all these digital systems at that point, and that when it went over, because all the dates had been like, you know, was month, day, year, and it's like 99, they're going to reset to zero, and everything thought, it's going to be 1900 and nothing's going to work. And it turns out that was not real, that none of the systems shut down, that nothing turned off, that Y2K was nothing more than a fear. But it did kind of expose the reality that we are, we're one technological just disaster away from not functioning as a society. And this is as close as we've had, is this CrowdStrike thing that happened this morning. And it's pretty interesting to see some of the ways it impacts the world of sports, because all these systems don't work. I mean, for us in the radio world, like I said, like getting on the air, and I think you saw it on ESPN this morning, like ESPN was able to eventually get on the air with a show like Get Up, but they didn't have their graphics package, or most of their graphics package, because everything is networked and behind all the cybersecurity, and you know when that goes down, you can't access anything. I think SportsCenter couldn't get on the air this morning. SportsCenter AM. So the media world is one thing. For us, we did have a heart attack, Anthony, about 15 minutes before the show. You thought all our drives were down and we couldn't get to any of our stuff?
Yeah, I told Craig urgent because I had to call him.
Yeah.
And I feared since he didn't answer, I was like, oh, man, we're going to be in for a rude awakening when the show starts.
Yeah, but then turns out we're okay.
Yeah.
Our stuff does work. But all the airline stuff, I mean, could you imagine if this was like an NFL Friday where all the NFL teams that were supposed to travel today just like couldn't travel? That'd be not good. We're kind of lucky that for the most part, sports are on hiatus. Although I do wonder, like, are there Olympic athletes that are now going to get to Paris a couple days or at least a day, if not multiple days later? I mean, there are people that are stuck mid. I saw I saw one of my friends on Instagram who like got stuck mid-connection. She and her husband were traveling somewhere, I believe, and they get off one flight and they get a text. It's like your next flight is canceled, and there are no rebooking options. And so they got stuck. And then you have, specific to athletes, Erica Wheeler, who is a guard for the Indiana Fever, is supposed to compete in the skills contest tonight. And that skills contest has a victory prize, I believe, of $55,000. And she can't get to Phoenix. She's going to miss the skills contest unless there's been an update that I haven't seen where someone, I think that's an opportunity potentially for Caitlin Clark to play hero. CC's got to have that private jet money and a private jet connection. Hey, let's get a net jet from my teammate. But then again, I don't even know if that's possible to book. But Wheeler tweeted out, she's like, my only PJ, friend connection is maxed out on his flight hours until Tuesday. So he can't fly. So like she had someone that she would have been like, hey, can you fly me to Phoenix? The answer was no, not allowed to. She can't get on a commercial flight. And now she might miss the All-Star Skills Contest and a chance to win a pretty significant chunk of change because she can't get to Phoenix. It's crazy. I think most of the baseball teams are in place for the weekend because everyone's starting back up tonight. But other than that, pretty much everyone's like the W has All-Star, and most people were in Phoenix already. Thank goodness. Hopefully everyone can get out okay. A lot of the Olympic athletes are probably already in Europe. But other than that, most sports are on the Olympic break. I do wonder, like the NWSL starting off its summer series this weekend for the Spirit, like they just got to get to Philly. So I'm assuming they were taking a bus anyway. But like MLS, I guess, has games going. It just shows like why cyber attacks are so scary. And this wasn't even a cyber attack. This was just a glitch. But this is why I think a lot of people are so scared about like cybersecurity from national security standpoint is like, what happened if this was Russia who turned this off or whoever? And it wasn't CrowdStrike being like, yeah, we know what we did. We typed something in wrong. We're going to fix it or whatever the hell happened. It's kind of terrifying, Anthony.
Terrifying is, I don't think that does it justice.
Like we just can't function as a society. Like this all happened and most of our cell phones kept working. Can you imagine if all the cell phones went down too?
Oh, man. What do we resort to at that point?
We'd have to read a book. Anthony, how many books do you have in your home currently that if you were like, I guess I can't play this, I can't do that. I guess you could find out how to play Connect 4 or something against yourself. It's a callback from the show earlier in the week. But if you were just like, I guess I'm going to read a book.
I got about maybe like between 12 to 15.
Okay. Not bad. Yeah. Have you read them all, or are these like books you need to read?
These are books that I've mainly read. Usually like books that I read like in college, I probably like didn't keep, but these are the ones I read that I really liked and wouldn't mind rereading them if I needed to, kind of thing. If I wanted to.
Our house is overrun by, we need to get a new bookshelf. Rachel is a voracious reader. Literally the fastest reader I've ever met in my life. Like she'll finish a 400-page book in a weekend.
My thing is, like when it comes to reading, it's also processing what you're reading at a very rapid rate. And sometimes I'll be having to, reread 2 times, 3 times.
Depends on the book.
Yeah, depends.
Yeah, the density.
Yeah.
She just actually put a book down that she was reading. She's like, there's too many random characters. Like this is just not well written. And she'd been like, if this is where she'd like hold her hand at her, like let's say her eyebrows, be like, if this is where I put the book down, she'd hold her hand up at the bridge of her nose and be like, this is where this book is. And she couldn't bring herself. And eventually she's just like, you know what? I'm going to read another book. And she just looked, the New York Times, I think it was, put out their list of like the best 100 books of the 21st century so far. And she bought a bunch of them. And she picked up a new one to start because this other book, she just couldn't do it. And she starts reading it and she's like, man, there's a lot of characters in this one too. It's very simple. It was the same author. She didn't even realize it. The next one she picked up of this stack of like 12 books that she bought was the same author.
That's
so funny. But she said that the new one's a lot better. In part because the first one was a book on the French Revolution, and this one's a book on Tudor history, and her Tudor history, she knows most of the characters because that's how she rolls.
I thought you were going to say it's Game of Thrones, but,
No.
it's not.
No.
Game of Thrones, I'm not gonna say it's a bad series to read, but I will be curious to read it just because I want to see how it aligns with what actually happened in the show.
Yeah. I feel like I'd be more into reading Game of Thrones than I would be watching it because I know it's a show that is pretty gratuitous with its gore.
Yes, it is very gory. I will say that.
Reading that means you don't have to necessarily see it. Not that I want to necessarily read a bunch of descriptions of people getting whatever messed up by dragons and spears and whatever.
Well, you wouldn't get to those until like season 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so you got 4 long seasons. Oh, okay. I will say the first book will be really, really good. Really good.
I'm
and
sure.
Not too gory. Not too gory at all.
Maybe I read a lot more nonfiction, but if I decide I want to break into some fiction, which I probably should, perhaps, if the whole world goes down again, I'll buy Game of Thrones. All right, when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, a game of 3-point shootout tonight in the WNBA, and the 2 biggest stars for the contest are missing. Is it that in itself a big miss? So we'll talk about it next, and then we continue our Commanders top 10 of the 2024 season in terms of importance countdown at 4:30 with number 6 here on the Team 980. Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. If you miss any part of the show, make sure that you check out the Hoffman Show podcast. We put it all on YouTube for you, and we do put most of the show on YouTube, but we also put it in our podcast feed on demand for you anytime, anywhere. So as you bop around this weekend, say you missed some of our positional group previews today, we hit the running backs at 6 o'clock, or you missed our top 10 most important commanders countdowns at 4:30 earlier in the week, and you're excited to see who is number 6 coming up in about 10 minutes. Well, you can go catch up this weekend. Just search the Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app and check out the show on your time, anytime, anywhere. Tonight in Phoenix is the WNBA's All-Star Friday night. So you have a skills contest and you have the three-point shootout, which will feature Washington Mystics center Stephanie Dolson, who's been one of the best shooters in the league all year, percentage-wise, having a tremendous year shooting the basketball. But it will not feature Sabrina Ionescu, who, of course, took on Steph Curry in that amazing made-for-TV event at NBA All-Star Weekend. And it will not feature Caitlin Clark, who I don't need to explain to you why that's a big deal. They both declined. Ionescu is a part of Team USA, and they are going through the training camp. Clark is not a part of Team USA, as you probably very well know, but she is a part of the All-Star game this weekend. So tomorrow it is the WNBA All-Stars featuring Clark, featuring Angel Reese, playing together with Arika Gumbawale and others against Team USA before Team USA heads to Paris for the Olympic Games. And they both declined. They were offered. Ionescu is second in the WNBA in three-pointers made with 74. Clark is third, tied for third with 71. They are, of course, prolific. They are, of course, both stars. And I am very much of the opinion that they both made a mistake. Not because they need to do it, because their star power is not going to be increased by doing the three-point contest. But there would be more eyes on the league's premier event tonight for All-Star Friday night if these two were participating. And there would be really fun, like, back and forth between the two of them as two of the greatest shooters on the planet about their potential to win. Or, you know, if someone beats them, like, hey, okay, Marina Mabrey, who, by the way, the first time she'll ever represent the Connecticut Sun after being traded yesterday, will be tonight in the three-point contest. And it's good for her star power. It'd be good for Steph. It'd be good for the other players who are in if one of them could beat Sabrina or Caitlin. But ultimately, when Clark didn't make the Olympic team, I was fine with it because my refrain, which a lot of people agree with, some people disagree with, like, not going to relitigate this now, but my refrain was the Olympics are not a marketing tool. It is ultimately on USA Basketball to pick the best team, go win gold. That's your only responsibility. And while, yes, growing the game, we hope happens, I don't know how many more people would have watched the Olympics and really what that would have meant in the long term for the game if Clark was there. Sure, would there be more eyes? Yes. Would it actually really grow the game? I don't know, because really the growth of the game is about more of the domestic side of things, and like, can we get more eyes on the WNBA versus the Olympics, which are a known commodity? But this is a marketing tool. The whole reason the All-Star game exists is to market the league. It's a chance to do something that's novel. This is a novelty item. The Olympics are not. The Olympics are a competition. They hand out a gold medal at the end. And while the three-point contest is by definition a competition, its point is marketing. And I find it frankly disappointing. Not like it changes what I think of either woman and their character and whatever, but I do find it a little bit disappointing that it's like, oh, well, I got to play in the game. Oh, it's taking 30 shots in 60 seconds and maybe a couple rounds of that. Like, it's not a big lift. It's not a big ask, and it would help get more eyes on this, which ultimately helps the league. And it should not be Caitlin Clark's sole responsibility to grow the WNBA. Or Sabrina Ionescu shouldn't have to feel like she's got to grow the WNBA. Like, it's all on these women to do it by themselves. But the point is, if they kind of collectively do it together and you check some of the most important boxes, it's not like you need to go out and do boots on the ground politics here. I'm not asking you to go door knocking to be like, hey, can you watch us on television? It's not begging. It's participating in the stuff that's already there. This is the lowest hanging of fruit. And so I really just don't understand what the good reason is that two of your biggest stars, who are the most prolific shooters in the sport, don't participate in the shooting contest. And if it's about the money, like, I mean, who am I to tell people what their worth is? But at the end of the day, like, what are we talking about here? Oh, if it was $50,000, I would do it versus the $3,000 or whatever it is. Like, you're both Nike signature athletes. Like, you're fine. It's about doing the things that maybe you don't see the immediate ROI, but it's just making sure that the league's marquee events, that the biggest stuff that the sport does to market itself, which one is the actual games, which of course they play in because that's their job. But then I would say All-Stars pretty high after that, they feel as big as they should. And I think this is not new criticism. I think for years, LeBron not being in the dunk contest was a fair criticism for this because the stars before him did. Michael Jordan competed in multiple dunk contests in the 1980s as he was coming up. You know, Dr. J, obviously, back in the day. Kobe Bryant competed in a slam dunk contest. Steph Curry has competed in many three-point contests. This is something that is expected of stars in the NBA, and they do it. And for Caitlin as a rookie, for Sabrina as still a fairly young player, I don't understand why they wouldn't do this. And I'm not going to say, like, because they're wimps and they're afraid they're going to lose, but, like, what else would the logic be here? Like, if you think you're going to win, then you just go out and win it. If you're like, oh, it's too much, like, they're probably going to be courtside in attendance. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm not going to go so far as to, like, crush them and say it's unimpeachable. It's totally irresponsible because maybe there is some other reason. I don't know. Maybe they have they've got a State Farm and a CarMax event that's paying them a ton of money and they have sponsor whatever. And if so, then bad on those sponsors for making that a conflict. But whatever the reason is, if I'm if I'm the league, I'm thoroughly ticked off that two of my biggest stars have decided to pass up on what should be one of my biggest nights celebrating the game and the sport, where you can have some good, fun, lighthearted competition with no injury risk at all, and you just go out and shoot your shots. I don't get it. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, we get on with our top 10 countdown of the 10 most important commanders of the 2024 season. Number 6 is revealed next. It's the Hoffman Show. We are on the Team 980, which you can listen to on 980 AM. Or don't forget 1067 HD2 if you have an HD radio. So just go like you would if you wanted to pop over to 1067 The Fan and then click up on your HD radio. And there we are in crystal clear digital high definition. You can also get that same crystal clear digital audio via the free Odyssey app, which is enabled with Apple CarPlay. So you can listen to us all kinds of ways on really any kind of device that produces audio, radio, or otherwise. Of course, we're also on YouTube as well at the Team 980. And it is time now to reveal number 6 in our countdown of the top 10 most important commanders of the 2024 season. To recap, which is getting harder by the day. Let's see if I can continue to do this off the top of my head. Number 10 was Dorrance Armstrong. Number 9 was Emmanuel Forbes. Number 8 was Brandon Coleman. Number 7 was John Allen. Hey, now it's easier when you write the list. That brings us to... Yeah, let's get that
6.
Get that music. Get the big fancy number. Music coming in with a vengeance. Anthony also looks like he's riding a horse to this music. Bouncing up and down.
I was.
Giddy up, Anthony. Number 6.
Number 6
is Quan Martin. Quan is one of the most interesting players on this Washington roster because he is the rare guy that was brought in by the last guys that actually could have just as easily been brought on by the new guys. Quan he's not like incredibly physically imposing from a size standpoint, but he is a guy that has pretty good size for his position, depending on what you consider his position to be. And that is, of all things, why I think Quan Martin fits as a Dan Quinn, Adam Peters style Washington commander. We know that the Commanders value positional versatility, offensively and defensively. We see Ben Sinnott on offense being brought in because he reminds Adam Peters of what Kyle was able to do with Kyle Juszczyk, Kyle Shanahan was able to do with Kyle Juszczyk, Greg Kittle, or George Kittle, I beg your pardon, etc. Defensively, we've seen the Donovan Wilsons of the world, even to an extent with Micah Parsons, where he played some on-ball, some off-ball, some linebacker, some edge. Those roles and responsibilities shifted, and even once they shifted predominantly to Micah Parsons being a basically full-time edge, they'd mix it up every once in a while because they could. And it threw the other team for a loop. And it threw an opposing offense for a loop when they're like, wait, is he not rushing anymore? What do we do? Okay, well, we can't not block him. And that messes with your ability to do stuff. And also, I think if you can do that without changing personnel on the field, it leaves the offense guessing a little bit more. Or if you're doing that with offense, the defense guessing a little bit more. Because your personnel isn't a giveaway. And I think that's the thing that's special about Quan Martin is you can sub someone else in and out of the game and then move Quan Martin and get some of that same effect. You can have Quan Martin play true nickel, buffalo nickel, safety in the box, safety in the post. You could have him, I mean, honestly, Logan and I have had this conversation. If push came to shove and they got in some wackadoodle injury bind, could Quan Martin play a passable version in the NFL of outside corner? Yeah, he could. It wouldn't be it's not his highest and best use by any means. It's not something that I think is in their plans, other than maybe in a certain formation for whatever reason they want to mix something up, or they know at the very least if like they've got another team that has, let's say, a George Kittle. Let's say they're facing the 49ers and the Niners like to mix things up by putting Kittle outside. And Dan Quinn is like, and Joey Jr. are like, well, fine. We're just going to know that if all of a sudden Kittle goes outside, we can trust Martin out there to play him one-on-one in space. Or even if we want to match it and make it look like a man-to-man concept, we trust him out there to play zone like an outside corner. Like, Quan Martin's versatility is extreme, and it's actually, I think, what got him in trouble, not Quan's fault. It's why the coaching staff last year got him in trouble, because I think they overloaded him. Quan's really smart, but he was a rookie coming into the NFL. And they asked him to learn so many different roles and responsibilities that I think it slowed down his ability to play fast. And I think what happened as the year went on last year, obviously there was to say there was mixed results is actually being far too nice to Rivera and Del Rio. But they did try to strip down and simplify some of the stuff, especially when Ron took over. And while other players still struggled because I don't think they were actually that good, or they weren't as well coached positionally in terms of the technique, and maybe they didn't get the communication that was passed on. Quan shined. Quan was excellent in basically the Rivera era of defensive coordinator last year. He played fast. He played physical. He's got his hands on the football. Like, he did all the things that you'd expect a second-round pick to do. And I think that then you up the coaching level to Joe Witt Jr., to Dan Quinn, and we're talking a guy that could be a star in this defense. Again, when we count down the 10 most important commanders, part of the reason some guys are farther down the list than others is I do think there's a version of the season where Quan is just an average player and this defense is fine because they have so many guys at safety. Could Jeremy Chin actually turn out to be the star and Quan is much more of a supporting player, and maybe even he falls out of the rotation where Chin is kind of what I'm describing with Quan. I think Chin and Quan are going to be fairly interchangeable. Quan obviously more valuable because he's a second-round pick on a better contract and he's signed up for the long term, where Chin is a one-year deal guy. And if he's awesome, great, and you try to re-sign him, but that also means you could lose him next year. But is there a world where Defoe and Percy Butler are your main two safeties and Jeremy Chin is the third, chess piece flex guy? Sure. And so that's why Quan is not sitting up there at like number 2. But at number 6, I do think the best version of this defense has the best version of Quan Martin. His high end is that potentially good from a size, speed, instinct, physicality, power, playmaking, etc. standpoint, that Quan Martin has the ability to elevate this defense into the top half / if he gets some help, the top 10 defenses in the NFL in 2024. Again, it's a wide range. He also could struggle to pick up some of this stuff. He could maybe be good as a Buffalo nickel, and he winds up being a part-time player. The post safety thing doesn't work out. Mike Sainristil still is going to be your main nickel. And so maybe there's a situation where Quan's very good in his role, but his role is limited. So there's a wide range of potential outcomes for Quan Martin, which is why he's not higher on this list. And when you say it that way, you're like, well, then why is he ahead of John Allen, who we put at number 7? And the reality is, because I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Quan is going to be a damn near every snap player, to the point that I think amongst Derek Forrest, Percy Butler, Jeremy Chin, Jeremy Reeves, Mike Sainristil, all of Dominique Hampton, all these different guys that are going to get nickel / safety snaps, I think Quan's the one guy who doesn't leave the field. I think he plays, if he's healthy, basically 100% of the snaps. And whether he's in the post, whether he's single high, whether he's part of a 2-high look, whether he's in the nickel, dime linebacker, whatever, he's going to be out there all the time, which is why I can go ahead and tell you none of those other guys made our list in the top 10. Quan's the guy. We talked about a lot of them. Quan was the guy, and he rises to number 6 as the 6th most important commander in terms of what we think for the 2024-2025 season. So that's our take / my take. What's yours? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. We take your calls next. What do you expect for Quan Martin in 2024? It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 5 p.m., Clinton Yates joins us with thoughts on Jason Wright's exit for the Commanders, or from the Commanders. No longer the team president, exits the team at the end of the year from his new senior advisor role. So that's at 5:30 today. Some fun. Anthony, Logan and I exposed ourselves to trivia or Commanders trivia, and we're like, all right, if we look like fools, we look like fools. And there were some times we looked like fools on Take Command. But it was all for a good cause. It was all for a group called Chuckle for Charity. And so we want to definitely let you guys hear Logan and I get some right and celebrate like fools, and get others wrong and look like fools, coming up at 5:30. And then at 6 o'clock today, of course, our positional group previews continue with the running back room pick six style. But right now, Anthony, you heard what I had to say about Quan Martin, who I have as number 6 on our most important Commanders of the 2024 season. Do you agree with where he is on this list so far? And what are your expectations for him for the 24 season?
Yes, I do love where he is. I feel as though if there was going to be one defensive back that stood out the most, it would definitely be Quan. And basically the way or how you laid out, how he may be utilized and deployed in this system, it sort of kind of gives me Kyle Hamilton vibes, just because of how the Ravens use him. They use him in the post. They use him in coverage. They also send him on blitz. I remember seeing him have like 2 back-to-back sacks on the same exact blitz. So I feel as though Quan definitely has that similar, natural ability. He's super athletic. He's fast. He can cover. And I think with the way, Joe Witt and Dan Quinn like to deploy the Donovan Wilsons of the world, or the Javon Curses of the world, I think Quan Martin can also fit that same exact mode. So year 2, I'm excited for him. I'm hopeful that, he can actually, play into the second round pick that we drafted him to be.
For sure. I mean, remember, he didn't play at the beginning of last season, and then he barely got on the field, 7 snaps, 5 snaps, 5 snaps his first 3 games, and then it started to trickle up, and then he was a starter at the end of the season. Weeks 15, 16, 17, 18, he plays 75, 62, 63, and then ultimately 33 snaps. And in those grades, and again, PFF grades are what they are. It's funny because he's given a 26.9 grade because I got a 25.8 in coverage against Miami because we saw the Tyreek Hill play, but it wasn't his fault. Yeah. You can't reasonably expect him to guard Tyreek Hill on a slot fade one-on-one. One, we don't even know that was his coverage. 2, if it was, why is he in that position? That's insane. But against LA, he had a 62 grade, so like a yellow, 66, low green, 61, again, yellow against San Francisco. And these are games where they gave up points and they weren't very good. But in that stretch, he's at 90.8 against the Jets as a run defender. He was consistently a really, really good blitzer, and he finished strong. His best game of the season was probably that Dallas game. At the end, or one of his best games, grade-wise, it was his highest that he played real snaps in. A 76 was a 74 in coverage. But I think that more than the PFF grades, which sometimes have a hard time, defensive backs are probably the area where I trust PFF grades the least, just because it's so hard. This is not a shot at PFF. I think that PFF folks would acknowledge this. It's so hard to, unless you know the coverage call, to know exactly whose responsibility it is. And sometimes you have a guy who looks bad because he's trying to make up for someone else's mistake, and the ball gets completed on his head because he's trying to do his teammate a solid. And if he had just done his responsibility, you would have had a total coverage bust, and everyone would have been like, whoa, what? But that guy wouldn't have gotten blamed. So it's just hard, I think, on that. But, watching the tape, talking with Logan about it, talking to people in the building, Quan really finished last year strong because I think they more solidified what they wanted him to do. He showed how coachable he really was once there was, some remnants of quality coaching in that building. But now he goes through an offseason with one of the best DBs coaches in the whole freaking league, and with Junior in his ear. You know, he's got great players around him now that can help him out, and guys with some more veteran leadership, and obviously in Bobby Wagner, but also a guy like Luvu. You know, Defoe's now going into year 4. So you've got these guys that are able to help him out a little bit more and give him cleaner vision, and he's got better players around him. I'm really excited for what Quan Martin can do. I think you could say a lot of the same stuff about Jeremy Chin, and that is the thing that I really wonder, and I think we'll get a better feel for in camp, is there's so, like, you've got Defoe, Percy Butler, I guess it should be mentioned here, because he's a different kind of player, right? He's you think of him as like a big over-the-top speed safety that can cover sideline to sideline because he's 4.3 fast, and that's just different than anybody else. But the 3 big ones, I think, are Defoe, who was a starter for them last year until he got hurt, Chin, and Quan, and who's going to be on the field the most. And then you've also got Dominique Hampton floating around, who I think is going to have a very specific role as kind of a dime linebacker, 6th DB, but also plays in the box kind of player because he's so freaking large, but moves really well, can cover tight ends, et cetera, et cetera. And I think Quan's going to be the guy who's on the field the most. But it could wind up being Chin. I think those are your 2 main safeties. 2 guys that are probably better in the box. So, like, that is an interesting thing to navigate. They don't have, an Ed Reed back there, obviously. They don't have Earl Thomas like Dan did in Seattle. But I don't even know if they have, like, Donovan Wilson or some of the guys that really helped Dan and Joe out in Dallas. Their safety play was so good, but they were bigger body types. They were guys that could play in the box, and they made it work, and obviously were as good of a defense in the regular season as has existed in the league consistently over the last 3 years, and they won 12 games a year. So I'm excited to see what they can do. And if it doesn't work, then I'll be like, okay, well, at least we know that was another bad pick of the Rivera era. Because I kind of think if you can't play DB for Joe Witt Jr., you probably can't really play DB in the NFL.
Yeah, and I also just think, having so much versatility on the field is just, I think that's just the most exciting thing. Not only at the linebacker position, but also at DB. The fact that many of the guys are so interchangeable, it really just has the offense like wondering, all right, who's coming, who's not coming, who's staying in coverage. Because they all can similarly do the exact same thing. So I think that's the most exciting part.
For sure. And that's a quarterback's nightmare. Who's coming? I don't know. And by the way, who's coming, and do we like any of our matchups? Not really. Like, Quan's ability to guard or to cover slot guys, to cover tight ends, to cover running backs, like, that's so essential in a defense like this, because you do, when you blitz sometimes and you bring some of these exotic looks, like, you leave yourself exposed with subpar matchups, or at least one-on-one matchups, and you got to win as a defensive player, and Quan certainly can, as long as he's not on an island in the slot against Tyreek Hill, something that literally no one in the league can deal with. All right, when we get back, Clinton Yates stops by for his Friday visit here on the Team 980. Some thoughts on Jason Wright's exit and where the Commanders go next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, hour 2, here also live on the free Odyssey app. In fact, every hour is live on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 5:30, a little Commanders trivia fun. Take command style. Me and Logan get quizzed. How do we do? How embarrassing does it get? Well, you just got to keep listening to find out. 6 o'clock, we preview the Commanders running back room for the 2024 season. It'd be really weird if we did the 2014 season. I don't know why I almost said that. I think because I have Friday brain. But that's okay. I've reinforcements along the way as we talk about one of the biggest stories still floating around the DMV. It is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Joining us to talk about the big story, really from yesterday, but still the biggest story today, our guy Clinton Yates, commentator, ESPN, and host of ESPN Daily, which you can listen to daily. All right, Clinton, you saw the news yesterday of Jason Wright's exit. He'll be a senior advisor through at the latest the end of the year. When you think about the obituary, if you will, of the Jason Wright era of these 4 years, what do you think of? What comes to mind?
I think he was the guy that was put in a tough spot, to be honest, when we're starting things out. He was, coming on as the first black president or whatever the actual title was, already inherently had certain kind of things around it that made people look at him as a pioneer of something that I felt was kind of an undefined role. I mean, he wasn't involved in anything football related, but seemed to always be in the news. And I think that he, because of, just sort of the personality that he has, it turned into one of these things where he was defending stuff that didn't need to be defended. And I didn't really love the way all of that went. I'm never really sure what some people in certain NFL offices, front offices that is, ever really do. And I think he was another one of those people where it felt like, at least to me, the NFL kind of sent him in to make sure that this didn't go completely haywire, and he reached a little farther than he needed to with it.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation because, obviously, I think most people we never hear about that are in positions like his, right? If you're running the business side, we see how teams run, ticket operations, what kind of promotions they put on, and all that stuff he has a hand in. But the fact that he was so forward-facing is, I think, different than most people. And the fact that, most fans have an opinion on him is something that most presidents of business operations, I think, in the NFL, that's not the case about and for.
Not at all. In that scenario with Scott, where he went after him because of an interview he did, that to me was extremely unbecoming. And I think it also shed some light on just exactly how that franchise wants to look at itself going forward and who they want to have in the building, period. That kind of stuff can't happen. This idea that journalists are supposed to be nice to players or they're supposed to be setting them up for positions of success in order to gain access, that's so far gone and so far wrong. I will give some credit to him, and I think that he learned from that, thinking, okay, you can't just openly antagonize people trying to do their jobs just because somebody might have been put in an uncomfortable situation. We're all adults here. I think the fan base learned something. I think, quite frankly, a lot of the media corps learned something that we all knew to be true, which is that franchise has been doing that for years. But the question for Harris and this team going forward is, right aside, who are you going to have around? Who are the type of people that are going to be the forward-facing individuals that the media deals with, that the fans deal with, that various business partners or whatever, or people around the league deal with? This particular tenure asked the question of, what does this look like going forward? And I guess he's not part of the proceedings, but it was a very weird stint and kind of a weird job, honestly, to be doing for somebody who people seem to know so well.
Yeah, for sure. Clinton Yates with us from ESPN. Catch him on Around the Horn, of course, ESPN Daily, et cetera, et cetera. Let me ask you one more thing on Wright specifically. Then I want to circle back around and kind of have that conversation about what's next. But the thing with Jason and his legacy to me is you can never separate him from Dan because it's impossible to separate the owner and the president. He's ultimately working for that guy. Some of the stuff he had to do, he was doing technically his job. And my criticism thus was always, well, why'd you take the job? Because there's a lot of stuff you're being asked to do that's not real good. You think that's fair criticism? And if you try to put yourself in Wright's shoes, was it ultimately worth it for him to make that history, do the things that he thought were important to try to make it better while knowing he was going to have to do some bad stuff? Or is it fair criticism to be like, nah, it wasn't worth it because look at some of the stuff that you had to do along the way?
Wouldn't have been worth it to me. And you know how I feel about Daniel M. Snyder. There's no world in which I'm aligning myself with him on a business context or anyone, never mind a personal one. It was just too awkward to say I alone know the right path when I am, in fact, the one working for the guy who has led us down the wrong path. That, to an average smart person, you don't have to be a journalist, you don't have to be a football fan to look at that and say, well, why should I believe you? Give me one reason. There was never really one that ever really materialized. And that was, in my opinion, yes, the reason why you don't take jobs like that with people like that. So, yes, they are inextricably linked, unfortunately. Do I think that he won't be able to go on and do good things in this league or whatever else he does? Yes, I do. But as many people know who have worked in that building, the sense of the resume, when it's got his name on it, Daniel M. Snyder's, is hard to wash off. And I hope that he's satisfied with what he chose to do when he came to the D.C. area.
So that leaves what Josh Harris has to do now, which is find the next person. If you think of repairing the business relationships, repairing the fan relationships, getting the stadium stuff done, and ultimately building the stadium, how do you kind of rank the importance of skill sets of whoever the next president of business operations is for the Washington Commanders?
I think the number one thing that they're going to have to work out is whatever's happening with the stadium. The NFL is as well-run a league as far as money-making is concerned, such that if you put in somebody who simply knows how to walk and chew gum at the same time, you should be able to make money. But what happens with the stadium is critical to so many different things. It's critical to, A, being able to build back up a fan base that's willing to go every week. That's literally half the battle in terms of actual Commanders fans, not just people who want to be in an NFL stadium. And number two, there's the regional element of all of this. There's a lot to manage when it comes to the team's old relationship with the state of Virginia going all the way down to Richmond, the team's relationship with Maryland as tenants, the team's relationship nostalgically with D.C. as the old one that got away. There's a lot happening there that is vital to the next few years of what that franchise is going to be, no matter what the choice is. So, yeah, the business will run itself in many ways, and there's a lot to overcome in that regard. But I don't know who or what entity has that kind of adaptability, to be able to figure out all of these different regions at the same time and make everybody happy. Do I have an instant shot solution to all of it? No. Do I think that RFK is still a little bit of a dreamland fantasy world for people that doesn't in fact make sense for DC? Yeah. Do I think the natural place for the team to be is probably Virginia? Sure. But things have changed because, the brother of the governor is somebody you cut off as a franchise years ago. So, or whatever, former governor. So there's all of these bizarre elements that they have to try to make a meal with that, in order to please everybody, is going to be really tricky. That's easily the hardest part of this next task by a mile.
So with that gets me to thinking, which, our conversations sometimes do. Like, would you be prioritizing someone with local ties who understands the region? Think of some of the big businesses, whether it's, you go back to one of these consulting firms or whether you go to one of the major businesses headquartered here, someone who's got relationships in this area? Are you looking at someone who's navigated something remotely similar in a sports arena? Are you looking at the NFL league office maybe, where they've been involved in this process in some way? And can you poke someone from New York and bring them down here who's already up to speed on a lot of what's going on? Like, where would you be looking because of the uniqueness of what you have to navigate in DC, specific to the stadium, and that being the number one task of the next person?
Well, I can tell you who I won't start with. It's anybody who thought that moving to Potomac Yards was a good idea, but that's another matter. I mean, I do think that there is something to be said.
So sorry, Clinton has marked you off the list.
There is something to be said for an outsider in this particular position. And while that's difficult for me personally, being a native, I do think that it requires a lot of local know-how, if for no other reason than understanding the history of all of this is important. Because, look, you can go back to RFK, you can do all that stuff, but it's not like you can just start, reliving the experience of being in a headdress or whatever other imagery that we've distanced ourselves from as well with the franchise. That's the hardest part about all of this, is that the history is something that we all just kind of know, but we're not really going to be highlighting in any major way because it requires saying a slur in order to do it. Some people jump at that opportunity. Fans, frankly, people in the media. People in football do it all the time, but in a real life business context, you can't. So that's where the tricky part comes in, and why I think you need somebody that has knowledge of the area and not just somebody who's smart business-wise or, I don't know, arena-wise, because there's such a delicate balance of specific histories that you got to find a way around so that you can still manage to foster pride. You can get new people, and maybe if you're really reaching, get people to come back, because a lot of people have written this team off forever because it's just too much of a headache.
No, for sure. Like the alumni relations with the players is super important. And I think that the Harris Group is started to do a lot of work on that front. And the one thing that I will say is, as we wrap up here, Clinton, is that is interesting is the Harris Group kept Jason very forward facing throughout their first season. And obviously, that's tailed off probably in part because they knew that this day was coming. Also, the season has ended, and, so much more of what was going on around the franchise was around like the draft, and, a guy like Adam Peters is here, yada, yada. But I think of some of the alumni events that they had last year. I think of, frankly, the press conference that they had to introduce the Harris Group at FedEx, or what at the time was FedEx Field, what is now Commanders Field. That might be relevant as to why Jason is gone in part. That he was the guy that emceed that. Like, they didn't pull one of their broadcasters or anything like that. Like, they had Jason being very forward facing at the beginning. I just find that fascinating that he was such a forward facing part. And I do wonder moving forward how much of a public forward outward facing type of person they want now that they have their own football people in place. And maybe they would prefer those people be more out front than, say, Ron Rivera when they took over.
Right. I'll say this. The unfortunate thing about the Jason situation is that had he not come to D.C. with Snyder to do whatever it was he was doing as a relatively high-level but lower-impact henchman or goon or whatever you want to call it, he probably would have been perfect for this job. Alas, the timing was messed up. That's what's so unfortunate about it. None of my beefs for Jason were ever super personal. They were professional to the point that moved into what I think had to do with his personality. But, again, I don't have a problem with the idea of someone like that. I just think wrong place, wrong time. And now that you need somebody like that, he's not the guy anymore. It's really kind of a bummer if we're being honest about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. He was a crisis management guy at McKinsey. So he did come in to do crisis management, and they're no longer in crisis. So I'm not surprised that they're moving on to someone who I'm assuming doesn't come from a crisis management world.
No, but he is a football guy, and he's a smart guy. And so this would have been a reasonable place to bring somebody in like this, crisis management aside, and say, hey, what do you think? How should we go after this? Wouldn't have minded that. But once again, the Snyder stench, baby. That thing, you stank.
It's Clinton Yates, everybody. Check out ESPN Daily each and every day in their podcast feed. And, of course, catch Clinton on Around the Horn and read his work at Anscape and ESPN.com. Have a great weekend, my friend. Thank you.
You too, Gregory. Hope your servers are up and running.
Don't we all just wish our servers were up? Clinton Yates, everybody, again with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back later in the show, we're going to actually take a look at ESPN's top 100 list and compare Anthony and I's predictions that we made for the top 5 earlier in the week to what the actual top 5 were. But they just posted who they think the next 25 will be for the 21st century. So if they do this list again in 2050, which 25 players that are currently under the age of 25 will be added? We're going to look at that list before we get to our Commanders trivia. Logan and I embarrassing ourselves for your entertainment coming up at 5:30. All right, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And I got to admit, that was genuinely, we had a technical issue there. My whole unit died, which is super duper fun. We love when that happens, but that's not true. We hate when that happens. And it's going to cost us talking about the next 25, because I have to tell the story of what just happened, which is, so I heard the music start and then my headphones, capiche, gone, done. I was like, uh-oh, that's not good. As I'm doing the show from the home studio today, and I look up, and because Anthony and I can see each other during the show, we have a screen that we share that also serves as our backup, which is great. So we have cover. But I look up, and Anthony is singing his face off to who is that? Not Imagine. Is it Imagine Dragons? Yeah. So Anthony's just singing his face off to Imagine Dragons, and I am frantically waving. Yo, we got a problem. You got to switch. Like, I was like, go to break. I need to switch something. Like, I'm like, hey, dude, over here. And Anthony is just not looking at the screen, not looking at the camera, facing forward, waiting to hear my voice come in so that he can bring the music down. And he's, as same as I was. And I'm like, and you don't understand. Am I telling a lie? Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can see you talking. I was like, I don't know if he's trying to talk to me. I don't know if he's talking to the audience. And eventually I just faded. I was able to switch my headphones over. And then you were like, and we're going to go to break. And I was like, okay. Yeah. So that's what just happened to our show. I think what happened is, I think the power cord needs to be replaced, and I was running on battery and didn't realize it, and then the battery died. So now that we go to a scheduled commercial break, I'm gonna figure out this power cord situation, and hopefully the show still sounds great for everybody. We want that to be the case, and that's kind of where we are. It's the Hoffman Show, thriving. By the way, I got to say, Anthony, I got to say this one thing. We could have just played this entire thing as if the CrowdStrike thing just tried to kill our show.
That would have been a good joke, not going to lie.
That would have been probably the smarter play.
Yeah.
For us. But it was not, we did not get got by CrowdStrike. I got by a different non-systems related technological failure. And I really wish that I had I thought about capturing you singing and me frantically waving. But I was like, no, let's be solutions oriented versus just capturing the humor of it all.
Yeah.
Alas, this is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming on YouTube at the Team 980. So we have coming up at 6 o'clock our positional group previews, which of course today is running backs, and so we continue to preview the Commanders season. Very excited to get to the running backs pick six style coming up at 6 o'clock. But on Take Command this week, we were joined by Stephen Kogan, who runs a site called Chuckle for Charity. And Stephen's a big Commanders fan and big fan of Take Command, who reached out and was like, hey, I would like to have you or come on your show if you're willing to and raise a little money for charity and quiz you and Logan on Commander stuff. And I was like, it's the middle of July. We have nothing better to do. And what else do we have to do anyway when the whole result is we're doing this for charity? So we did, and this is how it went. All right, we're wrapping up our show by embarrassing ourselves. That's probably how this is going to go. We're going to welcome in Stephen Kogan, who
Today's top story.
Chuckle for Charity. And the point basically is they make really entertaining videos that give you a laugh, but also raise money for charity. And Stephen, who is a lifelong Commanders fan, thought it'd be really fun to reach out to us and have the chuckles be at our expense by giving us some Commanders trivia. That's my version of how this is going down, Stephen. If you would like to give a far more eloquent description of what you're trying to do here, be our guest.
I don't know if I can be more eloquent than that. That pretty much summed it up. But yeah, that's what it is. Chuckle for Charity. It's a site designed to raise money for charities just by people watching entertaining videos. We'll do it through whether people sponsor individual videos. Like if somebody, Exxon, wanted to sponsor this video, they could send a check directly to whatever charity they wanted to send it to, or we're going to eventually raise money via YouTube monetization. But that's the goal. That's the goal, raising money for charities just by people watching entertaining videos.
Love it. So they can go to YouTube. All right, we're wrapping up our show by embarrassing ourselves. That's probably how this is going to go. We're going to welcome in Stephen Kogan, who runs a site called Chuckle for Charity. And the point basically is they make really entertaining videos that give you a laugh, but also raise money for charity. And Stephen, who is a lifelong Commanders fan, thought it'd be really fun to reach out to us and have the chuckles be at our expense by giving us some Commanders trivia. That's my version of how this is going down, Stephen. If you would like to give a far more eloquent description of what you're trying to do here, be our guest.
I don't know if I can be more eloquent than that. That pretty much summed it up. But yeah, that's what it is. Chuckle for Charity. It's a site designed to raise money for charities just by people watching entertaining videos. We'll do it through whether people sponsor individual videos. Like if somebody, Exxon, wanted to sponsor this video, they could send a check directly to whatever charity they wanted to send it to, or we're going to eventually raise money via YouTube monetization. But that's the goal. That's the goal, raising money for charities just by people watching entertaining videos.
Love it. So they can go to youtube.com/@chuckleforcharity. Is that where they subscribe?
Yeah, or just chuckleforcharity.com. It'll take them straight there.
Excellent. All right, so that's where you go if you want to help out the cause, which you're going to help out by watching entertaining videos. Who doesn't want to be entertained and do good at the same time? We love that. And so, Logan, are you ready? Are you mentally prepared to try to? We don't know how hard these questions are going to be. We don't know they're going to be history. Like we don't know what they're going to be. We just know it's Commanders trivia.
I'm not ready. Trivia is always like one of those really humbling things. You're like, oh man, I got this. Like I'm a pretty smart guy. And then you go to like the bar and you're like, man, I don't know anything about anything. So
yeah,
this will be a fun experiment for sure.
It is like that. Most of them are Commanders trivia. I did throw, I think, at least one NFL trivia question in there.
Okay. All right. So we got 7 questions from Stephen here, and what we've done, we've created our own scoring rubric so that we can try to win. Is basically how this works. To borrow from the old great show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Everything's made up and the points don't matter, but winning matters to us. So we're gonna make each question worth 2 points, and then on some of these questions, there's like kind of mini follow-ups, tiebreaker type of things that will make worth 1 point. And so if we can get above 50%, we wind up somewhere, or a little bit above 50%. We wind up somewhere around 10 points. So 14 total plus the bonus is the max score here. We're going to try to get 10 points 2 questions per correct answer. Logan and I are going to work as a team, in part because we don't have like a whiteboard or anything to compete against each other. We're just going to totally be transparent here. And also because we might need the brain power to get these. All right, Steven, that's our setup. Let's go. First question on you, sir.
All right, let's go. First, before we start, the charity that we're going to be playing for
yes, very important.
St. Jude's Children's Hospital. We'll put a link in the description box. So you can go there and learn more about them. If you don't know about them already, you can donate to them if you want. So a wonderful charity, and we like linking to them a lot because they do such a great job. All right, are we ready for some questions?
We are. I'll give the 15-second version of what St. Jude does for those that don't know. St. Jude provides cancer care for children at no cost. So if you have a child who gets diagnosed with cancer, they get flown to, and you along with them, of course, get flown to St. Jude in Tennessee, and they will care for your child, some of the best medical care in the world, and it is all at no cost because when your child gets cancer, having to pay for it should be the last thing you have to worry about. Rich Eisen and the NFL Network have done amazing work with them over the years, amongst others. So happy to play for St. Jude and embarrass ourselves for the kids at St. Jude. All right, Stephen, let's go.
All worth it. All for a good cause. All right, are we ready for this first question?
Let's do it.
This one's a little bit tougher to get the brain synapses going. All right. As a Washington quarterback, so only as a playing for Washington, whether it was the Skins, football team, or Commanders, who threw for more passing yards, Kirk Cousins or the combination of RG3, Alex Smith, and Sam Howell?
Kirk Cousins.
Wow.
It's got to be Kirk Cousins.
I think it's Kirk.
Right,
I'm just trying to think Alex only had like half a season. Sam threw for like 4K last year, but I know that Kirk had 2 4,000-yard seasons. One was almost 5,000, and he had 3 years as a starter. So it's definitely Cousins.
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Kirk.
There you go. 1 for 1. It was actually pretty close how close the numbers were.
Yeah, what's the actual number?
It's 16,206 for Kirk, and the combination of the other three, 15,974. So
wow. Yeah, because I guess Robert had a couple of years worth. So they would have more seasons. But yeah.
And I was going to go with Heineke, but he kind of threw the group bunch way too high. So I stuck with it. So you're 1 for 1, and I thought that was a tougher one. So look, hey,
good.
You guys are acing this already. Although I wouldn't get cocky, but hey, you're doing well.
Trust me, Stephen, we're not.
This one I thought might be a little easier, and one of you may actually have played in the game we're going to be referencing. So
it's definitely me.
Yes.
Yeah, you.
I would not guess you, but hey, someone at home might agree. What player did RG3 throw his first touchdown pass to? And since you both may get that, who was it against? Which team was it against? And how many yards was it for? So kind of a 3-and-1.
Was it Pierre Garçon, New Orleans, 2012? I think it was it 80 yards? It was something like that. It was like 78 yards, something like that.
We got 2 out of 3. Do you want to?
Yeah, Craig, let's phone a friend. Do you remember what it was? It was that long, it was drift, right? It was drift.
Logan knows the concept.
Right, and then he comes across the field. He hurt his ankle on the play because the guy tipped his heel, right? And as he ran in, I think it was it shorter than that? It was a long play, though.
I think you got it right, and you're close enough. Do you want to guess a number, though? You're a little low on the number. It's a little bit
low.
86?
88.
88.
Yeah.
There we go. Look at that.
Nice.
2 for 2. All right. I'm going to throw in another one. I thought, no, this one.
Logan, were you on the field for that play, or were you on the sideline?
No, I was not on the field. That was when like Fred Davis was really rolling. But I remember being on the sideline being like, wow, that's pretty cool. Good job, Robert.
Yeah. I felt that same way. All right. So speaking of Pierre Garçon, who has had more receiving touchdowns as a Washington team player? Again, only their Washington stats. Pierre Garçon or Terry McLaurin? They both played 5 years for the team so far.
In 14, Terry led the league in receiving with 115 receptions, I think. So I'm assuming he was a bigger feature of the offense. But I don't remember.
Terry hasn't had any monster TD years. Like, he's been solid, but he hasn't had like a 10 touchdown year, I don't even think. Nevertheless, something greater than that. And he's been on some really bad scoring offenses. So finding the end zone in general during Terry's time, through no fault of Terry's, hasn't been a strength. It was for sections of when Pierre was here. I would guess Garcon.
Yeah, so would I. That's my guess, Pierre.
Sorry, that one is incorrect.
My guess what's the touchdowns?
He had Pierre Garcon had 21 touchdowns. Terry has had 25.
Oh, wow.
So they add up. It's like 6 here, 5 here, 4 here for Terry, and they add up. And Pierre had 37 total through his career, but only 21 with the Skins. So, all right. So you got the first two right. That's that one.
That's something, right?
Yeah.
All right. We're still on track for our arbitrary 10-point line of victory.
Yeah. This one's a recent question.
Okay.
Who led the Commanders in sacks last year?
Oh, that was
Sacks.
Sweat.
That is
Sweat still. He led both the Bears and the Commanders in sacks last year.
That's pretty good. Good job, Montez.
How many did he get for the Commanders? That isn't part of the question, but that's just like let's call
I believe it was 8.
No, it's 5 or 6, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think
6
it was
and a
5.
half.
Then
A 6.5.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
So this one, Logan, you may have a bit of an advantage for because it happens to deal with your buddy, Mr. Fred Smoot. But I don't know if that helps you or not. He's kind of shy and quiet. Maybe he's never talked about it. So we'll see. Who had more interceptions when they played for, again, the Washington franchise? Fred
London
Smoot
Fletcher
or Champ Bailey?
Oh, I was going to say. I know. Wow. I love to give Fred. Okay, this is a little peek behind the curtain. Every time they're together, Fred and London Fletcher, Fletcher just say, how many picks did you have? And I think it's like 23 or something like that. And Fletcher's like 37. And so, like, it's just a constant thing with those guys. Anyway, I would say, how long did Champ play here? Craig, do you know?
I don't think it was that.
But he had a couple seasons where I remember looking it up. He had like a 5 interception year, a 4 interception year. I think he had like a couple 2s and 3s. I'm gonna say our guy Fred Smoot with the old 20 whatever, but that might be career. That might be career interceptions that he's citing there, which would throw a wrench in the plan here. So,
how many years did Smoot play here?
Well, he played
quite a number.
5 or 6 because he had 3 in Minnesota and then he came back. He played for 9, so 6 I think here. So,
yeah, he had the 2 stints. I love how the tag teaming of the brain power is going.
It still doesn't come up with an answer.
I think so.
I feel like Smoot, like in a trivia setting. Now I'm going game theory here, right?
Yeah.
The logical answer is the Hall of Famer. So you go the other way. With all due respect to Smoot, right? But like Champ Bailey is one of the 5 greatest corners ever. So why would you put Smoot versus Champ if the answer wasn't Smoot?
Just because
I'm going to say Smoot.
Just because it's
all
funny.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to say Smoot too for the same reason.
Yeah, I told you there would be a trick question in here. The answer is they tied with 18.
Oh,
so
my gosh.
I have a tiebreaker.
Okay.
How many?
They both had 18 with Washington. So
I probably could have just
tiebreaker
mathed that out, actually.
Who had more interceptions between Fred Smoot and Sammy Baugh, the Shohei Ohtani of his day? He quarterback, punter, and he played defense. So
Here?
Fred Smoot versus Sammy Baugh.
I know Sammy Baugh has more. We gave Fred shit about this like 2 days ago.
Sammy Baugh.
Because we were rating quarterbacks. We were rating Washington quarterbacks. And he has a bunch. It's like 30. It's like 40 or something. It's how many interceptions is it?
He had 31.
Yeah, 31.
Which is also incredible because they didn't throw the ball that much in his time.
No.
Yeah.
And to play both ways and do that it's.
And that was my argument for why he's the best quarterback, because he has more interceptions than Fred as the quarterback.
I'm guessing
Fantastic.
Fred didn't agree, but
No, he did not. I mean, surprise, surprise, Fred did not agree.
That's amazing.
All right, but you get that point that you got the tiebreaker. So
There
All
we
right,
go.
we'll take it. So what are we up to? 5 points now?
yeah,
I believe so. I think we got 2 correct answers plus 1 random tiebreaker, even though we didn't get
I
the.
think you got 4 correct. I believe you only missed 1 out of the 5.
Look at us.
Okay,
So
I'll take it.
You're sailing
Math
past
Math
whatever.
has never been my strong suit.
We're well on our way, and the points don't matter, so we're just going to
Yeah.
kind of keep rolling.
Yeah, you're doing really well. So here's a general NFL question: Who led the NFL in passing yards last year?
I think it wound up being Mahomes, but I might also be thinking of passing attempts because we were tracking. Like Howell was leading the league in yardage for a long time, but then he had December happen, and on that front, I also know that Mahomes finished with one more attempt than Howell, which kept Sam from being the guy who got dropped back to pass more than anyone else in the league, despite the fact that he was him as a rookie behind that O-line, which was perhaps talked about on this podcast through the lens of the play caller at some point. I would the guys that come to mind, Logan, Pat, Tua, because they threw the ball like crazy in Miami. I'm trying to think who else.
I was gonna say Josh Allen was the other one that I was thinking of.
Yeah, Josh had a big year. But also like guys that didn't miss games.
Matthew Stafford would be another one. Just I don't think it is because they had so many rushing attempts in LA last year.
Yeah, like Detroit. I mean, Goff should be up there. St. Brown had 1,500 yards receiving on his own, but I think they run the ball too much.
We're forgetting somebody though.
Steven, have we said the right answer yet?
You have said the right answer, yes.
Okay, I'm going to say Mahomes.
I'm going to say Josh
Is that
Allen.
both of your final answer?
No, it can't
this
be
is where we
Patrick
diverge.
Mahomes, man.
This is where we diverge. I'm going Mahomes. Logan's going Allen or someone else. And now we're
okay, but we have to come to a consensus though, right, Craig? Like, why do you think it's Mahomes?
Because he is better than everyone and threw the ball more than everyone.
Like, I think he threw for this. I think Dak Prescott had more passing yards than him last year. Yards.
Who do you think it is?
I think it's Josh Allen.
All right, Josh Allen.
All right, both good guesses, both wrong. It was Tua.
Oh,
damn it.
No.
Mahomes actually had a down year. He wasn't even in the top three, and no one was actually near 5,000. Jared Goff came in second, Dak came in third, and Tua had 4,624 to lead the league.
Man, Tua.
So it was. You mentioned Tua. I thought you were going to stick on him once you mentioned they throw the ball a lot.
I talked you out of it. I talked you out of it, Craig.
Yeah, well, you all talked me out of Mahomes more, and yeah.
I tried.
All right.
Mahomes is always a good guess for that, but
yeah, if it's quarterback adjacent, just say Pat, and who's going to get mad at you for saying Pat? All right, I think this is the last one we have here.
This is the last one we have. All right, let's end it on a high note. Who has more career sacks? The combination of Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne, or the combination of Dante Fowler and Dorrance Armstrong?
Total.
Ooh.
Yeah,
not like a Washington thing.
Yeah, well, the Armstrong and Fowler have zero.
I know they just
Washington.
got here. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a weird question. I just want to make sure we're global.
As in their careers, who has more combined sacks?
Fowler's been around for a while and has had some big sack seasons. Daron also had 11 2 years ago.
I know, but Fowler's had like 15 when he wasn't he in LA? Didn't he have like 15 when he was in LA?
He had a big year in LA. He had a couple pretty solid years in Jacksonville. I would say it's Fowler and Armstrong. Although Armstrong's a pretty young player still.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like John's average about 80 a year, right?
Yeah, but Daron probably has averaged almost that, but he had like the one big year and then was super down. Like he had at one point.
But there's been a couple years where Daron's had a sack. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Which is funny because like his pass rush win rate has been fairly consistent and his sack numbers have been wildly inconsistent.
Right.
I'm going to say Fowler.
Which is why this is like a little nerdy, but that's why that's the more important metric when looking at defensive linemen. Anyway, here we go. Back to this fun game we're playing.
Fowler Armstrong.
Fowler Armstrong.
Fowler Armstrong. The answer is no. It was very close, separated by a half a sack.
Oh.
Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne combined for 69. Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong combined for 68.5.
Wow.
Jonathan Allen has 39. Daron Payne has 30. Dante Fowler 45. Dorrance Armstrong 23.5. So,
dude, that's more for Daron than I thought. What'd you say? It was 30.
30, according to ESPN stats, if they're correct.
I'm curious if we looked up the PFF stats because PFF counts them differently.
Which is weird. Weird bit by PFF. Anyway,
it is a weird bit. They're like, we do our own stats. I'm like, okay, cool.
Sacks is a weird stat to change too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems very obvious, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was awesome, man. This was really fun. Chuckleforcharity.com. We're playing today for St. Jude, so you can go and donate there, and make sure that you then click over to their YouTube and subscribe. The back end of this is that, like, if they hit monetization on YouTube, then just by people watching without even the donations, they generate money, which is awesome, which is a really, really great thing. That's really, really easy, and hopefully some of these videos can catch on and just start spinning cash in charitable directions. So make sure that you go to chuckleforcharity.com, donate, and then click over to the YouTube and subscribe and spend some time. Just turn the videos on in the background and then go do your choice. Just like let the views rack up. I may or may not have done that on my own. I didn't just admit that out loud, did I?
Have you done that?
Stephen
Greg,
Kogan.
Come on.
I'm not. I plead the filth. It's a Chappelle Show reference, in case anybody doesn't know. Steven, this was great. Thank you, sir. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you guys doing this. Definitely. It was fun.
And we'll see everybody next week back here on Take Command when training camp starts. Yeah, that's really next week. It's the Hoffman Show. We are live on the Team 980 and always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Final hour on a Friday has a pick six previewing the Commanders running back room in just a moment. And then we started the week this way, Anthony, and we're going to end it this way. ESPN has their top 100 of the 21st century list. Anthony and I started the week by making predictions on who we thought the top 5 athletes would be. We'll compare our list to theirs coming up at 6:30. But right now, it is that time to continue our previews of the Commanders position group, or the Commanders in 2024, position group by position group. Today, it's time for the running backs.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
When we do the numbers, are you going to tell me? I'm going to have him first, or are you going to tell me?
To take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, here we go. It is time to talk running backs for the Commanders. Question by question, we will unpack this room, which, as we'll get to in question 2, has a new coach for the first time since I've been covering the team. Randy Jordan out, but we'll get there in just a moment. First, we have to start with the actual players themselves. It is time for number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1 is who are the dudes. It starts off with Brian Robinson, who has been a really, really good player for the Washington Commanders in his career. He has consistently had a high yards per carry number. I think he has more versatility in him than many want to give him credit for. And I think it's pretty disappointing that we didn't get a chance to see that in the way that we thought we were going to last year. I think when we were all out there at training camp, we saw a guy in Brian Robinson who could catch the football, was lining up outside, looked pretty good, running routes, all this stuff. And then we get to the season, and it's like, well, where'd that dude go? And they didn't hand him the ball as much as you'd like. He didn't get involved in the screen game as you like, in part because those two parts of the game were just non-factors in the Eric Bieniemy version of the Commanders' offense. And I do think this year you're going to see both of those things be way more impactful. I think that that's something that Cliff believes in, getting playmakers the ball in space. I think he knows Brian Robinson's a playmaker. And then I also just think from a running standpoint, he fits very well into what Cliff did in Arizona. And we'll see what Anthony Lynn, who's run every kind of run scheme you can. He obviously was with Kyle last year. Got to see all the outside zone stuff that is kind of the basis of Kyle's offense and a lot of the West Coast stuff up close and personal. He's run gap scheme stuff before, which is more similar to what Cliff had run in Arizona. And James Conner had a pretty sensational year with Cliff's final year with the Cardinals. So I'm excited to see what Brian Robinson does as the featured back. But then there's the guy who's actually gotten most of the headlines this offseason because he's well known and he does Kay Adams show on the regular, and he's a big superstar because he won everybody in the fantasy league a couple years ago, and that's Austin Eckler. And that's not to say that Austin Eckler still can't be a great football player. I think we're going to find out pretty quick what kind of football player Austin Eckler still is, because it really comes down to, does he still have it physically or not? I think he was banged up last year. I think his straight line speed took a hit, and thus his ability to create big plays was not what it was before. And if you lose a half a step as a running back in the NFL, you go from being a big-time, explosive, big-play player to a dude who gets tackled a lot. And that's really what Austin Eckler was last year statistically. It was just an average running back who got tackled a lot. And I think his health and the ability to keep him healthy as a compliment to Brian Robinson is big. But the other thing that I think is huge for Eckler is he's a very, very good pass protector. At least that's his reputation. We'll see how it holds up this year. But if he can be that third down guy who is both a threat as a release valve, someone who can line up in the slot or split out and take advantage of a matchup if they want to go empty, someone who can stay in and pass block, like that is hugely beneficial to this offense. And then I think what's interesting about this running back room is you kind of have a backup for both guys. you have Chris Rodriguez, and this is, of course, going into camp. We'll get to our prediction at the end here of who sticks around in the long term. But Chris Rodriguez is that banger of a first and second down back. He's not as good of a receiver as Robinson, although he did show some ability last year to catch the football and get out in space a little bit, screen game. I think he just reads block. I'd say he's a pure downhill running back. He might even be better than Robinson. And he needs to obviously hold on to the football and all that kind of stuff, but he showed the ability last year to read blocks. His timing is excellent. He's got good feet, and he's a horse and a half to bring down. And then Jeremy McNichols is just a solid third down NFL back who's been around this league for a long time, who's played in some different offenses. He's a guy that, I don't even know if a lot of people know he's on the roster, but he's a legit NFL player. His best seasons, of course, came a couple years ago in Tennessee, 2020 and 2021, backing up Derrick Henry. In 2020, he averaged 4.3 yards a carry. But the bigger thing for him is as a receiver. And in those 2 years in Tennessee, he had in the second year almost 250 yards receiving. And again, that's only on 28 receptions because you don't get a lot of snaps backing up Derrick Henry. He was only he missed 2022. He was in San Francisco in 2023, so he's with Anthony Lynn. And I think there's probably an argument to be made that he's here to help install the offense, help to be a leader in the room. He was drafted in 2017, which somehow makes you an old vet in the modern NFL. Time flies. But is he there as kind of Anthony Lynn's guy? Obviously, Eckler knows Lynn as well. Or is he there to legitimately compete? Is he there as insurance in case something happens? I don't know. But he is the kind of guy that potentially is a practice squad veteran that you feel like you can really rely on if you have to. I don't know that I'm ultimately going to put him on the roster, but he is a name worth noting as a guy who's hung around the league for a long time with good reasons, played a lot of special teams, and we'll see ultimately what his roster status is as we move forward through training camp.
Number two
is the coaching staff. Who are the relevant coaches to the running back room? You start with Anthony Lynn. Lynn is former NFL running back who is not only their running backs coach, but he is their assistant head coach. He's been he's not their assistant head coach. Brian Johnson got that. He's their running backs coach and run game coordinator. But he is the kind of guy that is probably going to help DQ and make some of those big time decisions and is going to have as big of an influence as you can, not being a coordinator. He's been a head coach. He's been a coordinator. He understands what it's like in those seats. He understands how to manage a game from that seat. And that is valuable as you think about managing players over the course of a season and kind of seeing the big picture and your role as a running backs coach in it. With that said, I think Anthony Lynn is definitely best suited as a running backs coach, which is typical for most position coaches and coordinators, right, and head coaches. Like, they all came up and got to that point because they're specialists in their area. But the reason I say that about Lynn is I was waiting after camp one day to interview Luke McCaffrey. And Luke, whose brother obviously played for Lynn last year in San Francisco, and Lynn were just talking about all these super fine details. And you can just tell the way that Lynn coaches. He loves this stuff. He loves the finer points of football and of offensive details. And he's going to be a great voice for Cliff to have in the room as someone who's been around the NFL for nearly 25 years. And I think it's also going to be a great sounding board for a guy like Jaden. There's so many ways that he can impact this team. But I think on a baseline level, him working with Brian Robinson, him having the relationship with Eckler, him bringing Chris Rodriguez along, you couldn't have asked for a better running backs coach. There just aren't that many better ones in the league. And so he's a super asset for this group. Now, the biggest question on the coaching staff is certainly Cliff. Cliff's use of the run game fluctuated some in Arizona. Obviously, he comes from the air raid background where they don't run it a ton. But I do think Cliff fundamentally, well, he said he's not running the air raid. He's going to have some air raid stuff in there for sure, the passing game. But I think that's one of the areas where Cliff evolved in Arizona, and he's friends with Sean. He's friends with Kyle. He's friends with all these, young hotshot coaches. And I'm sure he understands in the NFL the value of the running game, both to a young quarterback where he has found ways to insulate, Kyler Murray, for instance, in Arizona, and had so many great years in college with Kyler, with Pat and all the dudes that he had, Baker, and their various stops along the way. And I think he understands in the NFL, you have to use your quarterback. Not use your quarterback. You have to use your running game as the best friend of the quarterback. But you also, in this particular case with Jaden, need to use your quarterback in the running game, which is why Brian Johnson, who had great success with Jalen Hurts in Philadelphia, becomes a huge factor in terms of the coaching staff and how they put this offense together and some of the design concepts that they might use in the running game that will obviously have an effect on the running backs, right? If you can use your quarterback as a runner sometimes, but you design plays where you hand the ball off or it's option, and that holds a defender and creates a numbers advantage on the front side of a play. That becomes really important for the running backs. And I think Bobby Johnson, the O-line coach, who's also had success with running quarterbacks in Josh Allen and Daniel Jones in Buffalo and New York, respectively, also plays a huge part in the running back success this year. And the offensive line is going to matter to the running back. So those are the main coaches that have the impact. Lynn on down.
Number three,
who is the best player in this room? I actually don't think this is a hard question. I think if it's a harder answer by the end of the year, that's a great sign. I think Brian Robinson Jr. is the best player in this room. I think he's probably the best runner. He and Rodriguez are pretty close. I think he's might be the best pass catcher. And you get him out in space and you line him up. Like some of the routes that I've seen Brian Robinson run the last couple of years in training camp and in the spring are impressive. He's got it in him and he's got good hands. He's comfortable catching the ball in wide receiver type positions. Like it's one thing to catch a swing pass or a screen all the time. It's another to catch a ball that's coming at you vertically as opposed to horizontally because you line up in the slot and you ran a slot fade, or you're in the red zone and you ran a stop route and that ball's coming on you on your back shoulder and you got to get around, catch it, and take a hit. Like Brian Robinson can do that stuff. And he's also pretty tall, so you can throw balls up to him in a way that you can't, let's say, Austin Eckler. And he's shown an ability to catch those balls. So I think the best player in the room is Brian Robinson Jr. I think why it's great if it's harder to answer is that means Eckler had a bounce back year. If Eckler all of a sudden scores 7 touchdowns this year because he catches a bunch of balls out of the backfield, takes a couple screens to the house, is a bowling ball at the goal line, like touchdown vulture, sorry to Brian Robinson fantasy owners, like if that happens and he plays his role to perfection and we're like, I don't know, Austin Eckler was pretty essential to the Commanders' success this year, that's a great sign for Washington. But I do think Brian Robinson Jr. is the best player in the room, which leads us to
number 4,
which is who's the wild card in the room. And I do think you could make some argument about Chris Rodriguez, right? Like, what is he as a spellback? Does he get an opportunity and take it? Because I do think Chris Rodriguez is, like, if Chris Rodriguez was featured and given the right number of carries, could he be a 1,000-yard back in the league? Like, yeah, I actually think he could. But that's kind of the point at the running back position and why a lot of these guys have struggled to get paid is there's a lot of dudes walking around the NFL who, if given the right amount of opportunities, could be a 1,000-yard back. And with the bruising nature of Chris Rodriguez, the feet that he has, his ability to break tackles, that's all fine and dandy. The wild card's Austin Eckler. Eckler's been a Pro Bowl player. He has a know-how. He is a great blocker. He is a good screen player. And he can unlock easy opportunities for this offense, and he can keep Jaden Daniels safe in passing situations where you need that extra blocker. That is so incredibly valuable. And so the wild card is, one, can he still do that at the level that we expect from Pro Bowl level Austin Eckler, where he clearly was not that last year? And two, a big reason why he couldn't do that last year is he was hurt. And so if he's out, I think this offense takes a huge hit because you lose that. Yes, you can replace some of the screen game stuff with Brian Robinson. Yes, Chris Rodriguez can be like a short yardage goal line back, but you don't have the variety in the pass game and you lose the pass blocker. So while McNichols, I think, is good insurance to have, hopefully on the practice squad, I think if they lose Eckler for a stretch, that could really hurt some key situational offense. And so thus Eckler and his health, more than anything else, is the biggest wild card.
Number 5.
All right, Ant, key question from you. What you got?
I'm not going to lie, Craig. I was torn on my question because I just didn't know which one I should ask. So I asked you both.
5A, 5B. Let's fire.
The first one, which running back do you think is going to have the most all-purpose yards between our guys?
I think Brian Robinson.
Okay.
I think Robinson is probably going to be a 1,000-yard rusher if he's healthy, of course. I think he's going to get the opportunities and will be a 1,000-yard rusher. I mean, Connor was like a 1,300-yard back in 2021. So if he can do that, I think he's going to have more rushing yards than anyone else will have total yards. Plus, he has the chance to be a 300-400-yard receiver. So, Robinson.
And then which running back do you think will have the most touchdowns on the season?
That's a harder question. Who do you think?
To be honest, I think it's going to be Eckler.
That's kind of my lean.
I'm leaning towards Eckler. But at the same token, Cliff Kingsbury did use James Conner as a bell cow a couple of years ago where he was, always running the ball in those go-to-go situations. So I could see a situation where, Brian Robinson does get the nod and, he makes the most of the situation. So
I definitely think it's possible. And he's a big freaking dude.
Yeah.
Like, why would you take Brian Robinson out at the goal line? He's so large and powerful and enormous. But the reason is because Austin Eckler, God, there goes my voice. We almost made it to the end of the show, Anthony.
Good gracious. Yeah, just drink some water real quick.
I don't have any up here.
Oh, man.
Oh, no. Eckler's been really effective in short yardage. That's the reason. Hit number 6.
Number 6.
Who makes the team? 3 of them. Robinson. Oh, the wife comes to the rescue. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Anthony says thank you. You do the show on Fridays from home, and all of a sudden water can magically appear and save the segment.
Yes.
What would you have done if I was in studio, Anthony? Would you have just would you have run? I probably would have had water because I do try to keep some.
Yeah.
Wow. Been fighting it all week.
Good gracious.
And just sit in silence tonight. The point is that Austin Eckler, Brian Robinson Jr., Chris Rodriguez are going to make the roster. I don't think McNichols makes it. I think he's a practice squad guy that you can get there as a veteran. Or they can find some other running back and it'll be fine.
You don't think McNichols?
No. Okay. I like, he's a pro, but like, it's a roster spot that's more valuable somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather keep a 7th receiver, a 5th a linebacker, another safety.
Or a 10th lineman.
Yeah. Was there anything else that we wanted to say that I had to stop saying because my voice gave way?
We were talking about who would have the most touchdowns.
Yeah, I think Eckler, he's been so good at short yardage stuff over the years, which is why he won everybody in fantasy league a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And he's got big play potential on screens. And like I think Cliff is the kind of play caller that will call screens like in the red zone. Which I think are awesome play calls, like 20 yards. Like, hey, let's. They're all back trying to prevent everything. Let's get our back in space. Let an offensive lineman get free, run past a couple guys, and hopefully a receiver does his job blocking and you get in the end zone. So I feel like Eckler could have 7 or 8. B-Rob somewhere in that range too, but I'll say Eckler.
Yeah, I'm going with Eckler. And you want to know what's crazy, Craig? So I'm looking at his stats right now. Eckler has never been a 1,000-yard rusher. He has come extremely close to being a 1,000-yard receiver. He came up 7 yards short in 2019.
That's crazy. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. And then also, he's never been a Pro Bowl. I thought he was a Pro Bowler.
Wait, Eckler's never been to the Pro Bowl?
Never been to the Pro Bowl. Even though he led the league in touchdowns, total touchdowns, in 2021, never made the Pro Bowl. I didn't
That's
check
wild.
Like 3 different sources, and
Look at Haney doing the research. All right, I take back what I said about. Eckler being a Pro Bowler. He hasn't. He's just led the league in touchdowns. Seems important. Seems like it would get you to the Pro Bowl. Then again, Amon-Ra St. Brown didn't make the Pro Bowl last year, and he was the first team All-Pro. So what does anybody know?
Yeah.
All right. That's the worst positional preview. At least, well, actually, no, it wasn't. It wasn't bad. We did a good job. I just almost died in the middle.
Yeah. That's the only thing. You almost, couldn't.
Almost lost it.
Yeah.
We can get back. I'll have collected myself, and we will. We'll talk about ESPN's top 100 athletes of the 21st century. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, and we're limping home on a Friday. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up in our final half hour. ESPN put out their list of the top 100 athletes of the 21st century. Top 100 athletes, professional since 2000. And earlier in the week, Anthony and I guessed at who would be the top 5 on this list. Anthony said his guess from 5 to 1 was Michael Phelps, Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, LeBron James, Tom Brady. My guess was Phelps, James, Serena, Usain Bolt, Tom Brady. Anthony, are you ready for ESPN's actual top 5 list?
I think so.
All right. Well, that's good because it's time for us to read it. At number 5 is our mutual number 1. They have Tom Brady, who they list the key accomplishments: 7-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time NFL MVP, 2-time AP Offensive Player of the Year, 15-time Pro Bowler, 3-time first-team All-Pro, NFL record for career passing yards TDs. They have Tom Brady at number 5. We'll come back and talk about all these guys and gals at the end. Number 4, LeBron, all-time leading scorer, NBA 75th anniversary team, 20-time All-Star, 19-time All-NBA, 6-time All-Defense, 4-time MVP, 4-time Finals MVP, 4-time NBA champion, 3-time All-Star Game MVP. Number 3, Leo Messi, 10-time La Liga champion, 7-time Copa del Rey winner, 4-time Champions League winner, 6-time Champions League top scorer, 17-time FIFA Pro World 11 World Cup winner, 2-time Copa America winner, 2-time FIFA World Cup Golden Ball winner, 8-time Ballon d'Or winner, which is the big one. That's Player of the Year, record goal scorer for Barcelona and Argentina. Number 2, Serena Williams, 23-time major champion, women's record, 365 major match wins, 73 career titles, or 5th most by a woman in the Open era. And then number 1, they have Michael Phelps, record 28-time Olympic medalist, 23-time Olympic gold medalist, most gold medals at a single Olympics, when he won 8 at Beijing in 2008. So that's the list. Other names that I thought were interesting. Number 6 was Roger Federer. He's the top tennis player on the male side on the list. He's over Novak Djokovic and Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, despite the major wins and head-to-heads. But I do think a lot of the tennis community sees Federer as the best player. So I'm not mad about that. And he does have the second 103 singles titles, which is the most of the 3. Insane what he's done. Simone Biles, who obviously is about to add to her total, we think in Paris, 7-time Olympic gold medalist, 4 Olympic gold medals in total. Tiger comes in 8th. Bolt, who I had, it comes in at number 9. Kobe finishes 10th. Djokovic and Nadal 11 and 12. I think it's interesting, Anthony, to look at how they did this, because we had Brady 1, they have him 5. And to me, there's actually a very simple, and I don't actually even disagree with it in hindsight, explanation, which actually was first brought to my attention by none other than someone in our YouTube live chat on Monday. I saw this and I was like, that's a good point. Brady plays American football, or played American football, which is a sport that is solely American. The 4 athletes that finished above him in ESPN's ranking: LeBron, basketball, soccer with Messi, tennis, and swimming, Serena and Phelps, are all played by people all over the world. So I do think I can make a compelling argument for Brady 1, which I will in a second. But I do think that is a legitimate factor here if we're ranking across sports, across everything, is you look at everything: longevity, competition, accomplishment, etc. And it's both individual and, in Brady's case, team. And while undoubtedly he's the greatest leader and the greatest quarterback, I do think the fact that he's only 3-time first-team All-Pro in a sport that is played just in America, those are compelling when we're splitting the smallest of hairs here, even though he was great from the age of 24 34 basically till he was 46 and retired.
No, that is a great point. Great point. I feel as though, okay, I'll ask you this. If we don't, factor in the fact that we're talking about global sports, if we're just comparing, I guess, LeBron James, who also plays here in the States, to a Tom Brady, which athlete would you say is the better athlete of the...
Well, that's the thing, is that's what they're doing, right? And while LeBron plays a sport in America and is an American, he's had to play international players. Brady has not really had to. The rare, like, FA, maybe he played a game against F.A. Obata at some point, right? But, like, you're not picking from the best athletes in the world's population, where you are in a sport like basketball, legitimately getting the Jokers, the Giannis's, the Embiids. But also, if you just look at it accomplishment for accomplishment, yes, career. Brady's a 7-time Super Bowl champion, but I think it's pretty fascinating. He's 15-time Pro Bowler, sure, but he's 3-time first-team All-Pro. That's it. Like, I will admit this, which I've evolved, of course, because Brady just kept going and kept winning and was awesome, and he somehow kept getting better. But on the day that Peyton Manning retired, I thought Manning was the better player. Eventually, you have to give in to the longevity. But at their peaks, I thought Peyton Manning was better at playing quarterback than Tom Brady. And I think a lot of people felt that way.
Like me.
And so it's easy. Like, now you feel like a doofus because you're like, oh, Brady played for another 10 years. And they're like, what the hell? But, like, when it comes to, like, was he the actual best for the most of the time that he was playing? Like, I think a lot of people would have said Manning, even if Brady then would go beat Manning in the playoffs because he had the better team and the better coach and Belichick and the whole deal. 3-time first-team All-Pro is not a lot for the GOAT. Where LeBron is 19-time first-team All-NBA.
Yeah.
That might be the craziest stat any of these people had in terms of longevity of greatness. There's 5 dudes that get named first-team All-NBA. And if I read that correctly, LeBron has done it 19 times. Or no, 19-time All-NBA. So not first team, but still. I'm sure I like 15 of those. Yeah.
Easily.
And he's still, he was probably like second or third team last year when he's 39 years old. It's absolutely ridiculous what he's done. Messi, I mean, if you're the best soccer player, that's the sport that the most of the best athletes in the world, and if you're the best athlete in your country, you play soccer. And Messi's better than all of them. So I have no problem with that. Serena, obviously no problem with. Phelps is so interesting because he does play a sport that we, I think, care about more every 4 years, but it's not like he lost a ton in between. He dominated world championships. And to be at 28, I mean, he won 8 Olympic medals in 1 games. That is such a remarkable feat. I mean, you have athletes that are at the top of their games that have to pick. And we're seeing it in this Olympic Games. I mean, Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone is choosing, I'm only going to run the 400 hurdles because I think it's so demanding that I don't think I can run the 400 and the 400 hurdles. And Phelps basically went, F it, I'm going to swim them all, and he won all of them.
Yeah. I think also the interesting thing about Phelps, and I think this is also why you had Usain Bolt in your top 5, is just the notoriety that they bring to a sport like swimming. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I don't really watch swimming now, but when Phelps and Kayla Ledecky, when they're outperforming, they're gonna bring eyes. Same way Usain Bolt did for track and field, but there are some emerging stars in the track and field world now that are bringing eyes back. So I think just off of the strength of what Michael Phelps was able to accomplish, again, I still can't even believe 28 is insane, man.
28 insane. Is absolutely preposterous. And by the way, he was so thoroughly dominant that he still holds 4 world records. World record in the 400-meter individual medley. He was a part of the 4x100 team freestyle that won the Olympic and set a world record. Another set of world records in the 4x100 medley relay. and a 4x200 meter freestyle relay at the World Championship. So when it came down to like being part of a team, he swam some of the fastest legs and helped elevate. And then he's got the 400 meter individual medley, which like to me is the most impressive, like pure swimming event that you can have. You have to swim all 4 strokes for 100 meters each. Yeah. So yeah, man, I don't actually have a beef with the top 5. I said Bolt because I think being the fastest human being to have ever run is pretty damn impressive. Tiger, I'm sure a lot of people wish was higher, but the last 15 years have been a mess.
Yeah, I think also with Usain, I think some of his times could have been even faster if he just didn't let off the gas. Like he was breaking records.
Yeah, smiling.
And quitting 10 years
crazy.
Before.
It's crazy. I think
oh my gosh.
Biles and Ledecky at this Olympic Games have a chance to rise, obviously. Yep. The one sport that I think they absolutely just sucked at. Basketball. Kobe at 10 as the second guy on this list. It's not outrageous. I think Curry's the better player. I realize it's an unpopular opinion, but like Steph was the best player on 2 title teams. Obviously Durant was there, but they were still his teams. Like Kobe and Shaq, Kobe and Powell. Kobe was the best player on the 2 title teams with Powell for sure. There may be an argument to make that he was the better player than Shaq on the last title team in LA. But I think those were Shaq's teams, and then the conflict there is actually what did it, or did them in. During his prime, Curry never has had a season like Kobe had in 2006, where the team like wasn't competitive. And I realize some of that is like what happened around, but like he doesn't get to be off the hook because he ran Shaq out of town. And so I think that there is. But again, like that's also a personal preference. I think the joy that Curry plays with, the teammate he is, and all that kind of stuff, from a consistency over his career standpoint, I am a Curry, in my all-time rankings, Curry over Kobe guy. I realize they're close, whatever. I think you also have to consider Tim Duncan, who I also would probably put above. Because Duncan's 16 on this list. But Duncan was the consummate teammate. He arguably was the best player in the league during that whole, like, from the time that Shaq slipped enough, and Kobe was right there for sure, but, like, Duncan was consistently just excellent. He was the best defender in the league. He was a 25-point-per-game scorer, the most selfless superstar that's ever existed, the easiest guy to play with. Like, Duncan is one of the most he's 16th on this list, and he's underrated. But then you look at some of the other guys down the list in the order, I think they really screwed up some of the NBA guys. Like Garnett at 23, above some of the other guys that are down lower. Like, was Garnett ever really considered the best player in the league? So for him to be as high as he is feels wrong to me. I will say my inner Formula One nerd is a little ticked that Lewis Hamilton is 19th. He's the best ever in a sport that is worldwide and has been around forever. And he's below some of the people that we're talking about here. Like, he's below Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo has been outstanding as a soccer player, but, like, Lewis Hamilton is a better race car driver than Cristiano Ronaldo is as a soccer player. It's not even close. So I think you can definitely pick apart some of this, but I do feel like the basketball ones, there's just a lack of consistency in terms of what they seem to be looking for that I don't fully understand.
Yeah, especially, I still can't get over Jokic. Jokic at 28 is just crazy.
I don't know. He's 3-time MVP, which shouldn't matter.
3-time MVP, but there are people with better resumes than Jokic, just saying. And maybe that's just me being biased.
Well, yeah, I mean, the All-NBA stuff, not as many years. He's kind of, the championship was a bit more of a one-off as of right now. He's still got time to change it, though. So
yeah, he does.
We'll see. But the fact that, like, Jokic is 28 and Nash was, like, 70 or whatever it was, it's like they're kind of the same player. Just Jokic won a title once, and Nash never broke through. But multiple-time MVP, but we all know that there was someone else who was probably, like, truly a better player at the time. Not that they're not great, but, yeah. Whole deal. All right. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, the best thing from the show today and real things real people said into real microphones. All right, wrapping up here on the Team 980. Craig Hoffman with you for the Hoffman Show. And that's Anthony. He's the super producer of it. And as we play for you the best thing from the show today, Anthony had to save me, but he was not the only one. Friday's in the home studio, and we actually had a couple of moments today that just went off the rails. But thank God that my wife was home at one point during the show when the show quite literally started to get away from me.
Like, why would you take Brian Robinson out at the goal line? He's so large and powerful and enormous. But the reason is because Austin Eckler, God, there goes my voice. We almost made it to the end of the show, Anthony.
Good gracious. Yeah, just drink some water real quick.
I don't have any up here.
Oh, man.
Oh, no. Eckler's been really effective in short yardage. That's the reason. Hit number 6.
Number 6.
Who makes the team? 3 of them. Robinson. Oh, the wife comes to the rescue. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
Anthony says thank you. You do the show on Fridays from home, and all of a sudden water can magically appear and save the segment.
Yes.
What would you have done if I was in studio, Anthony? Would you have run? I probably would have had water.
Yeah.
I do try to keep some.
Yeah.
Wow. Been fighting it all week.
Good gracious.
Just sit in silence tonight.
Wow, that was really painful to listen to. I'm so sorry to everybody. I genuinely feel terrible about how that sounded on the radio. Because, like, it's one thing when you can see yourself and you're experiencing it, but when all you can do is hear it, that's rough. That was rough.
It's okay, man.
I'm also immediately going to go on Amazon after the show and buy myself a cough button.
Oh, that would be lit.
Because the way this setup works, I don't have one. I need one. I just realized that right now. The best thing I have for the current setup, the way we run the show, is I unplug the cable, which doesn't seem like the best cough button.
Or I will have to just be a little bit more vigilant and realize when you're pulling your mic away, I need to, But that would be like...
That would be some ninja producer stuff out of you. Which, like, I mean, if that's what it's going to take. I wish people... I'm going to post a screenshot of the ninja pose that Anthony just...
Oh, nah.
It's time for real things. Please end the show.
Real things.
We're not going to
suck this year. Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Earlier in the week, U.S. women's national team was in D.C. at Audi Field, and they decided to do something very smart for entertainment purposes, which is put a mic on Trinity Rodman and see what happened. Hold on. Hey, Anthony, you have to pause it. Just so folks understand what that was, because it might you'll be able to hear it if we play it again. They did their ceremony after the game of like the Olympic send-off. And as Trin was introduced, she hit the gritty and screamed. Mal Swanson, everybody. Making fun of Crystal Dunn because she's short.
Sick. The atmosphere for the U.S. Games is different. Say something on mic. Say something cool, Captain and Mom. Sorry, I'm really wet and gross. You can't give a Yeah, I can. It is so gross. I'm sorry. Like, it's disgusting.
Giving kids her jersey, but also warning them that it's disgusting.
I'm sorry. Can you do TikTok with me and my sister? Yeah, what do you want it to be? What do you want it to be? I don't want to live alone. You did it! You got it! Okay, yeah, we can do it.
And you get a whole TikTok routine. That was bad, but it's okay, she says. That was bad, but it's okay. What happened to the quality control trend? We got to only A+ TikToks.
I mean, after playing in a game, and then she might not have just.
Oh, come on! It wasn't like it was 100 degrees outside.
Well, that too. But still, she played the whole game.
I do think it was funny that she was like, "Yes, you can have my jersey. I'm so sorry. It's gross."
Yeah.
Because like, what do you do then? Do you sign it and you hope the Sharpie doesn't come off because you definitely want to wash it?
Oh, you gotta wash it. Or do you air dry it? It's gonna stink, but then you just hang it up.
Well, well, the wash is when the Sharpie would theoretically come off. Or is Sharpie like real permanent?
It should be permanent.
I would risk washing it, or just be like, you don't need to sign it, or I'll come to a Spirit game and you can sign it at the Spirit game, but I'll wash it first.
Yeah.
Because you can't put that thing straight, even if you're getting it framed. You gotta wash that thing.
You gotta do something.
She played 90+ minutes in 100-degree heat. You gotta wash that thing. That's our show. We'll be back on Monday. Hopefully, I won't be a threat to die during the middle of the show. My throat will be prepared. Get a nice weekend full of rest. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. And thanks for listening. If you missed any part of the show, check out the podcast. It's there for you all weekend long.